everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the Armchair Crew Chief, and we are right in between the middle of Kansas and Darlington, our throwback weekend. So, everybody, my name's Jordan. I thank you guys for hanging out with me and listening in, and please hope you like, share, and follow this podcast. But let's go ahead and get started on everything. So, Xfinity didn't race this past week. It was only the Truck Series and Cup Series, as well as ARCA. But going into the Craftsman Truck Series, it was pretty wild. They were talking about on the broadcast a lot of slipping and sliding, moving around. The track was slick, running up high, and so a lot of people were just getting into each other, wrecking. A couple of people that we follow on this podcast, Rajah Caruth was doing really well. He had a really strong truck, and he just ended up getting loose. So it's one of those things that it was rough to listen to and watch, really, on some of those, because you just sit there. I can't remember how many cautions they had, but you had your leaders come out and run out, and they run well. Haley Deegan did pretty good. She finished 12th. But Grant Enfinger, he just ran away with the race. He ended up finishing with a 2-second lead. And just to kind of put it in perspective, 10th place was about 20 seconds out. So, I mean, it was pretty wild. But, again, Kansas is one of those races. I think it was Truex that said it. It's like a homestead, but with a tri-oval. And you can run up high. And it's one of the tracks that you'll see a lot of people run up high and be comfortable. And then maybe the bottom will fill in and come in. Usually it's the other way around. Your bottom's your fast lane, and then the high side slowly starts coming in. So that was a big it's a change, and it proves to be for different racing. Moving on to the Cup Series, William Byron got the pole. There was a strong showing by Kyle Larson. I mean, he pretty much had the race locked in, I think, just going by and watching some of the replays, because I wasn't able to fully watch this race. But Larson got spun early by Reddick. Truex, Byron, Hamlin, Larson, they were pretty much the front runners for the whole race. LaJoie came out and he led, I think he said, about 3 laps, 2 under caution, 1 under green. But it was a lot of strategy with tires. There was a lot of guys out there that ended up holding a set of stickers for the end of the race, hoping for that late caution, and that kind of just hurt some of the guys. Truex, he finished 8th in the race, and it just kind of hurt him because of he was waiting for that caution. I think himself and a couple of these other guys that were waiting, and LaJoie said he was waiting on stickers, a caution for stickers. But, I mean, if they could have gotten those, the whole race probably would have been flipped around some. But we had a few people lose tires again, so this is just, one of those things that we're just going to see commonality happening. I saw that Briscoe lost a tire on pit road, and he ended up coming back and getting it, but luckily there was nobody around there, so I didn't see any incident reports for him with penalties. Austin Cindric lost the tire. He actually, the tire blew apart, and then the rim came off. From what I've been told, it was similar to Almirola's, where the wheel broke. So we're seeing at least consistency there from NASCAR, that they're coming through and actually keeping the consistent penalties. But again, I mean, if the wheel breaks, that's malfunction. That's not pit crew error. So I don't know why we're penalizing people for that. I think they had a pass-through penalty, as well as they just released the penalty reports for them getting suspended. Anyway, it ended up coming down to the end, and it was a pretty good contested race throughout. Nobody kind of ran away with it. Nobody bumped out to a huge lead like Grant Enfinger was doing in the Truck Series. It stayed pretty good. As we were talking, as I mentioned about earlier, you had your top line was your high line, and you had to get close to the wall. So a lot of people were just beating and banging off each other, bouncing off each other, which, that's one of those things that will happen just in these composite body cars. It will allow it. And so, it happened with Larson. Larson was leading, and Hamlin came up, and he had the fresher tires, and Larson was loose. And they were coming around, and it was actually the last lap. I think they were coming out of turn 2, if I remember correctly. and Larson got a little bit loose right up there against the wall, and Hamlin was right there and just hit him, and he spun and got him out, and that got Denny into the lead. So, going into the Kansas race, it looked good. I overheard yesterday, I think it was, listening to Corey LaJoy. He was saying, if it was a few degrees cooler in the day in the air temperature, probably both lines would have came in better. But as we were saying, at Kansas, you run up top and you run that risk of hitting the wall. Larson's one of those guys that hit the wall, especially when he was at Chip Ganassi. Reddick likes to hit the wall. It's just they like to run real close, and it's not knocking them on their racing, but they like to run that real close to that wall, so they have less room for error than some of these other guys do. So, I don't know if I like that move. Denny was probably a little too close, but, there's other drivers out there that are defending him, saying it was a racing incident. And, it looked like it, and it kind of stinks, but you just got to go with what's given to you. We're not that big of Denny Hamlin fans, but he is statistically proven that he can go out there and hang with the big boys. Unfortunately, still hasn't won a championship yet, but you're looking at that, and you see all the other things happening. And, Denny got Joe Gibbs their 400th win. He's, I think, 16th or 15th now on all-time wins. So a lot of people have him up there with their high end on one of the great drivers out of NASCAR as we speak. And, he does good. I see, he races well. He finishes. He does good. Some things I think he does boneheaded, but a lot of people do boneheaded things. So he's not my driver. So I don't really, I'm not going to sit there and cheer for him and everything. But, yeah, it's different. And so I saw a random fact that popped up, and we'll jump back into the whole Kansas because there's some things we still have to unpack that happened there afterwards. Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. are the only drivers to have finished on the lead lap in every race this year. That's pretty wild if you think about it. Either, everybody's been involved in an accident or just a pit road incident and hasn't been able to recover. But, the biggest one that I see with Truex, I think he finished 27th at Talladega, and he got put in that big wreck. So he was close to being on that lap down. But it was pretty interesting to see that statistic get put out there. But one of the big things that kind of came through on the whole end of the race was Noah Gragson and Ross Chastain. I think Chastain was saying something like, the 42 car didn't want to help us out on any, like in Talladega or anything like that, and then he just got in our way, and they had some scuffles and some tosses, and pit road ended up being like NASCAR 90s pit road. Punches were thrown. Gragson grabbed Chastain by the fire suit, and Chastain just punched him, and they got in a scuffle and they broke it up. Chastain also said something that, and I could have gotten that quote backwards, because Chastain did come out and say, I was told you don't push back on somebody. So, he kind of took that little literally, and he came out and swung and hit, he got Gragson pretty good in the face. I don't know what'll come about that. I haven't seen anything, but hey, it's pretty wild to see that. Kansas, I heard a lot of people say that Kansas was one of the best races, or the best race so far out of this next car. And just going back to like what Corey LaJoy was saying, this car was designed for these kind of cookie cutter mile-and-a-half tracks that we go to a lot, that they go to a lot in NASCAR. And so, finally we're getting some kind of competition at these tracks rather than a Hendrick car running away with it, or, Gibbs car or somebody like that. It doesn't seem like the Fords have been too running away with it, with the exception of maybe the 22 with Logano. But I want to see more closer competition, more interest to make it, interesting at the end, not just, the guy's got a 3-4 second lead, 5 second lead, whoop-de-doo. The only way we can get this done is if they throw a caution. I don't like that. I think that if we can get some closer races, And then just kind of piggybacking more on what Corey LaJoy was saying on the NASCAR radio on Sirius XM, what he's seen observationally has been that it seems like Chevys have really good short run life, but then the Toyotas come out and get it. And he was mentioning something too about, and I'll put words in his mouth on this one, the Chevrolets, it looks like they have a lot of aero grip on them, whereas the Toyotas have been striving and been getting the mechanical grip. So I kind of like that dichotomy, that separation between different teams. And I know we didn't talk about Ford and what's going on with them, but it gives that separation, and I think that's what the sport needs. You don't want to have two people good at the same thing and they're fighting back and forth. I'd like to see that fight between the two guys that are sitting there and they're going at it, but they're one. It's like looking at a slot receiver and a receiver outside. One's got good speed and the other one can sit there and take the short run, cut it, and sneaky, so I kind of see it like that. And I know LaJoy was going after some of the guys on some of their comments with Larson and Hamlin. Larson didn't – he was like, it's racing. He was upset. I mean, obviously, I'd be upset too. Denny came out and said after the race, he's like, I'd be pissed if that was me. And those are his quotes on that. So, chalk it down to a racing incident. We call this podcast the Armchair Crew Chief because I'll go out there and question it, but it's almost like and I've said this before, and if you're kind of new to the podcast or haven't been listening to all of them, I take this as like a Monday morning quarterback type thing. You sit there, we're sitting watching TV with a remote doing this. I have some knowledge of the way cars work and all that, but I'm still learning, and I have a lot more to learn. But just some things that I see differently. I mean, especially with crew chiefs, it's like decisions. You can always second guess a decision back afterwards. What LaJoy was kind of getting at, though, is some of these guys that are complaining about this kind of racing, they haven't even been at a go-kart track nearby. So I get where he's coming from. But when I'm watching it and somebody's being slick around there, it's like, what are you going to do? It's not a racing incident like a Brennan Poole type thing with Chastain. I've seen that one now go back and forth. We talked about that last week where Chastain just drove in the Poole and then Poole got up and collected Larson in an accident. If you go back and look at it, Poole let off going into the turns, but at the same time, I think that speed differential threw off Poole and Chastain. I don't think Chastain thought that Brennan Poole was going to be letting off that much or slowing down that much, and that caused that issue. I think that's just lesser equipment versus better equipment, and that gap, the technology gap, we'll call it, and that's what caused that. I don't know how all of that would work out going forward, but I think that's something to maybe look forward. Chastain's getting out there and he's making a name. He's ruffling feathers, and I like it. I think it's great for the sport to get somebody that people can not like. I mean, I think it gives more character to the sport. So between what he's doing and people are getting all upset about that, the Brennan Poole thing, or even like the Denny Larson thing. But you go back and you look at some of these older races where Dale Sr. and, some of these other guys that literally like punted the guy out of the way to win the race. And nowadays people are like, oh, that's best, that's great, and so on and so forth. But yeah, then they turn around and they kind of talk out of the other side of their mouth when they talk about the current racing situation and what's going on. So, I like it. I know a lot of people don't like some of that stuff, but hey, I think it brings more character to the racing. Yeah, some of it does stink, especially when you got a driver that you like or you follow that gets into it and it just kaputs. But other than that, I mean, you need something, because some of these races, especially like the Hendricks ones, it seems like, and like a couple of years ago, the Toyotas coming out, it's boring because you got a guy going out there and they're all just running in a line. And I don't like to see that out of some of these tracks. I'd rather see the guys compete and fight. I mean, 1 to 2 seconds, okay, 1 to 2 car lanes, 3 or 4 car lanes. But when you start getting 5 to 10 car lanes out, that you got to draw a line there somewhere. So that's kind of how I see that going forward. But just kind of cover on that, and that's kind of what Kansas did. We're going into Darlington. Darlington's a throwback race. Those are always fun to watch, to see the different paint schemes that have been coming out. Chase Elliott has one going for his dad, Bill. I'm kind of iffy on that one because it's red. That's all it is. Red and the number are similar. The way they did the sponsors don't look similar. Like, a lot of these teams will go out and they'll get the sponsors. I think Josh Berry's car for the Xfinity race, he's running a Sharpie car. I can't remember who it was for, and you guys are going to eat me alive for that, but I think it might have been Newman or Logano. But anyway, Sharpie. So the sponsor that they're using, or sponsor that has that race, they've made their name look like it did back then and stuff like that. And I think that's cool. But like Chase's, I'm kind of on the fence on that one. Ryan Newman's running a throwback, so he's going to be in the 15 for Rick Ware. It's going to be interesting to see what he does, because he's actually going to be in less equipment than he's been in before. So that's going to be very interesting to see how Darlington plays out. I think it's going to be a great race weekend. I kind of wish I could go and be there maybe next year. It just looks like it's a lot of fun. I know this is a 75 year, and they're going to have a lot of guys around. I just saw some of the guys named out for the 75th. But other big news that we had was Legacy Motor Club came out, and they announced starting next year they're going to switch manufacturers over to Toyota. This is big in the fact that, one, it gives Toyota, I think they said 8 cars now on instead of 6. So pack racing is going to be big on that. It's going to be one of those things that it'll help them out at Daytona, Talladega, places like that where strength in numbers when you pit. But what makes it a head scratcher, and he came out and said it's the business side of things, and he'll be grateful for it going on, is Jimmy Johnson is one of the co-owners. Richard Petty has interest in it. They're Chevrolet people. Now, I know Petty's run a lot of different things. He ran Plymouths, things like that back in the day. But, I mean, most recent history with these guys was Chevrolet. And so it's interesting to see that. But, hey, good luck to them. I think it's going to be interesting and going to be fun. And we'll see what comes out of it. Next year's going to be very interesting. I know 2311, there was rumors swirling that they were looking to get a third car going. I don't know how that'll work. Maybe Hamlin goes over, because I believe Hamlin's a free agent. Truex is a free agent. Truex has already made his he's made an announcement saying he will decide probably at the end of June whether or not he's going to be retiring or if he's going to be going on. Honestly, I'd like to see him, if Dale Jr. starts a Cup Series, I'd like to see Martin go over there and work with him, almost like a la, Chance 2 DEI type thing, and see what happens with that and get that going. But hey, it's different. We're going to be starting getting in the SRX season soon, and that'll be fun. Keep in mind also, I saw videos Kyle Larson's getting his seat tested. I believe it's next year he's going to be running the double, I don't know what you want to call it, but he's going to be running the Indy 500 and then flying out to Charlotte to run the Coke 600. So I'm curious to see how he is. I'm not a big fan of him in NASCAR now with Hendrick. I'm not a big fan of Hendrick anymore, but I want to see him succeed and see what he can do, because he's got pure talent, whereas some of these other guys can know how to squeeze out what they can get. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. I think it'll be cool. I think it was neat whenever they all do that. But anyway, so we have a lot to open up and look forward to coming up. And guys, I hope you enjoy this podcast. I know it was a lot of information shoved into a small amount of time. I apologize for some of it. I'm actually out on the road right now for other things. But, ultimately, I'd like to get this podcast to a point where maybe I can bring in other people, talk to them. I know I've said that before, but also bring in people from the races or show up at the races. I might try to start off with social media stuff too, going through it. And if you guys have any ideas or interest, let me know. I'm open to hearing from anything. And once again, I thank you guys for listening to the Armchair Crew Chief. And I hope you guys can like, share, and follow. Pass this along to everybody else and get this thing spread out and get some more names and bigger interest going on. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great week. We will follow up hopefully maybe at the end of the week. I'm not sure yet on what's going on this weekend with times going forward. But we'll see that. I know Darlington, the Cup Series race will be on Mother's Day, so don't forget to hug, kiss your mother, cherish them, tell them you love them, give them something nice. That race is going to be starting at 3 Eastern, so green flag's probably going to be 3:30. Saturday at 1:30 is going to be the Xfinity race, and then Friday 7:30 p.m. is going to be the truck race, so it'll be a late one there. But so that kind of gives you an idea on how to think about it. And just to kind of recap, we'll finish off with the with the list on the 75 drivers, just to kind of give you a few. I don't know if we had mentioned the Busch brothers are actually now on that list. Kevin Harvick made the list. Logano made the list. Those are kind of the newer people out there. Sam Ard, Larry Phillips, short track guy. Keselowski was one of them. And then I know we did mention Truex on there as well. So that's kind of the the most recent list there of some of these guys. And I assume it's going to be getting bigger and bigger until we get out to North Wilkesboro. And that's another thing that kind of came up, and we'll see how this plays out too. But there's a rumor swirling that maybe North Wilkesboro will get a points-paying race soon. I don't know what will happen with that. But anyway, we'll keep our ears to the ground and hear what's coming, and we'll report it to you guys on here, and we'll talk a little bit more about the racing and go from there. And maybe hopefully we can get this thing bigger, spread out, and start talking about some of these other things that are happening as well, just off the track with these drivers. I know a lot of them deal with going to the small dirt tracks around too and running. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Have a good one.